Season 2, Episode 4 of Pachinko starts off with Mozazu meeting Mr. Kim and talking with Mr. Kim and saying that Noah isn't what he used to be after they evacuated the country, but Mr. Kim assures Mozazu that Noah is now the head of the household because of the events that transpired. Now, it's kind of a burden as much as an honor as well, but you can see the burden that certain characters are facing in this series. There is no room for failure as the eldest person, which is said, and kind of in a way that the scene then switches to Noah and his old classmate Minoru, who walking in the fields, and the two have bonded since Noah showed up, and kind of you can see that kind of gives him mercy after he kind of stole something in the previous episode, and kind of goes into the whole aspect of a friend, a family, or a foe, which is really, really good. Now, Sunya is working out in the rice paddies, and Hansu's car pulls up, bringing a special guest to the country. So, in a way, you see Sunya looks on in complete shock, and as her mother, who she hasn't seen in years, steps out. Yes, very shocking. So someone new has entered the picture who you haven't seen in a while. Yuh-jung and Sunya run towards each other and embrace in a fantastic emotional scene, which is, after so many or however long, they're finally reunited. Now, Mozazu at dinner asks his grandmother questions about her journey from Korea. What's happening? What's going on? What is this? What is that? How did you get here? And he continues to switch back and forth between languages. And it's clear that certain people don't like that. And Yuh-jung doesn't understand him at all when he's speaking Japanese. She reminds her grandson, you must not forget that you are absolutely 100% Korean. And Hansu returns, and it is clear now that Sunya is now even more indebted to him from managing to bring Yuh-jung to Japan. The reconnection between Hansu and Sunya is really, really good in this, because you see Sunya go out for a walk at night, and Hansu drives up next to her and starts talking to her, and he asks if she's ever driven in a car before. When she hasn't, she responds, everyone should drive a car at least once in their life. He decides to give her a driving lesson, even though she's not very good at it at first. She starts to loosen up, and they begin to quickly, go down this dark road. But when fallen branches spook her, they end up crashing off to the side of the road. So they both get out and try to push the car out of the mud, which they're finally able to do. So then Hansu, still wrapped up in his obsession with Sunya, kisses her. She kisses him back until she hears a noise in the fields. She returns to reality and feels guilty since her husband only recently passed away, and that's something she thought she would not have done. Now, Yuh-jung has put the pieces together. She knows that Hansu is Noah's real father, and it's a real revelation that this actually happened already. But she reminds Sunya that, in a way, that he should never know who the real father is. The dynamic of father and parenting and the whole aspect of family dynamic is really, really shrewd in certain ways. But Hansu has not taken Sunya's rejection of him quite well, and he has learned that his foreman was kind of stealing chickens in order to survive, and decides to take out his fury out on the man. And it's a really, really interesting thing that transpires in this whole sequence back in the 1940s between Sunya, Hansu, the kids, and the grandmother. It's like, whoa, what is going on? Now we switch back to, and we go to the 1980s. Now, I will say, actress Anna Sawai is really, really phenomenal, and seeing her pop up and show up in these shows in the past couple of years, like Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, and Shogun, and now Pachinko, it's really, really good. Her dynamic filling this series is really interesting. Now, in 1989, Sunya wakes up from a dream in her home. She calls Solomon, but gets his answering machine. She kind of monitors and takes matters into her own hands, shows up in person at his apartment wanting to know what's going on. Although she's very critical of what's going on, she says that she had a dream and needed to speak with him. Before she can tell him anything else, Naomi, played by Anna Sawai, who I mentioned, shows up for her date with Solomon. Sunya convinces both of them to stay, and she brought plenty of Tupperwares full of food. And it's a nice little sequence and back and forth. And Solomon actually gets a phone call from Tom confirming that the hotel is pulling out and that Solomon's plan is now in motion. And while he's on the phone, you see Sunya and Naomi get to know each other a little bit better, and it's a nice dynamic seeing Anna Sawai and the actress that plays the older Sunya kind of gives her some instructions on how to prepare food, what to do to be that good housewife, so to speak. And Naomi explains that she doesn't cook very often, but that her mother did when Naomi was a child. So now, but she reassures Naomi, Sunya reassures her that the food her mother made must have been very delicious. And a sweet moment where you see two different generations so far apart, coming close together, bonding over the one thing a Korean culture is known for, which is food. Now, all the while that's happening, you see the three sit down to eat, and Naomi excitedly explains she's been working on a new deal with the financing company. She's helping them go public, and that Solomon was her inspiration for making that deal happen. You see Solomon's look on his face, and he's like, oh, okay. And in a way, you see the aspect of, Sunya like telling Solomon and Naomi, do not forget who you are in a way. But this harkens back and gives him the same advice that Yuh-jung tried to impart in her own grandkids in 1945. And Sunya has always lived with her life with integrity, and her worst fear is that Solomon will turn into someone who focuses more on money and power, which he kind of is turning into if you really realize it. Now, Solomon and Naomi do have an interesting scene together, and then the last scene of this timeline and of this episode, we see Sunya sits in her hotel room and calls Kaito on the phone. He says he's been waiting for her call, and she tells him about visiting Solomon and notes that his girlfriend is Japanese, but it is what it is, and nothing more can be done. The differences and what happens, and kind of seeing the reminder of how Sunya is in the same position that she was in the 1940s, even now 40 years later, is really good. This episode was really, really well written. You see the family dynamic. It's there. It's front and center. Going back from Korean to Japanese, it just mixes and melds well together. That's very, very underrated. I mean, season 2 already is, like I've been stating since I've started my episodic reviews of this season, far better than season 1, because season 1 we're just starting to get used to the characters. We don't know who's who. The going back and forth, we have to get implemented. But now we know who's who, what the story is, what the past is, what the future is, how we'll have ramifications and implications on everybody's family dynamic and culture. The acting is exceptional and amazing, and I absolutely love this series. This is something, and it's one of those series that is not talked about, that nobody is watching, that they should be watching because of how good it is. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought about season 2, episode 4 of Pachinko. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you think of it? What do you think about the family dynamic? Do you think that Sunya made the right choices in her past and kind of made up for it in her future? What is the whole Solomon storyline? Do you think him and Naomi will kind of fall in love and will get married? And what do you think will happen to Sunya and her mother as it goes on? What will happen to Mozazu and Noah? And the whole aspect of what is happening, and the aspect of, will things get better? And remember, this is all taking place, the past is taking place during World War II. So it has big, big implications as well. Let me know in the comment section below about all the questions I just asked. I'm Mr. Filmstock. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next review video. And be sure you tune in next week to my Season 2, Episode 5 review of Pachinko.